Welcome to News Nation's Backscroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
We begin with that historic UFO hearing on Capitol Hill today. As we just said, the bipartisan push for transparency, certainly decades in the making. The nation watched gripping testimony of UAPs, accusations of a government cover-up, calls for action, and demands for greater transparency on this issue. What are these unidentified objects? Where did they come from? And are we alone? Take a listen. Here are some of the key highlights from that hearing.
Finally, I'd like to thank these three brave witnesses here. They took an oath. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and dadgummit, they're doing it. And we owe them a debt of gratitude.
I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight three critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust. In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers, and I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar errors, but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. The majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines. Often, they are veterans with decades of flying experience. Pilots are reporting UAP at altitudes that appear above them at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the Kármán line, making inexplainable maneuvers like right-hand turns and retrograde orbits or J-hooks. If everyone could see the sensor and video data I witnessed, our national conversation would change. I urge us to put aside stigma and address the security and safety issue this topic represents. If UAP are foreign drones, it is an urgent national security problem. If it is something else, it is an issue for science.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency.
The controller told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. so the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All four of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, looked down and saw a white Tic Tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping-pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the Tic Tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the Tic Tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the Tic Tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the Tic Tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to them, and they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar.
G'day and welcome to a special edition of Reality Check, coming to you live from Cairo, Egypt. I didn't attend today's hearing in the Congress for the House Oversight and Accountability Committee because I had a prior engagement to be a host of a tour of Egypt's ancient ruins, and it's a very fascinating trip, I have to say. I'm really enjoying the experience, and there is a definitive connection to the UAP mystery, because just like the UAP mystery, the issue of the ancient technologies, the mystery of the ancient technologies of the ancient ruins of Egypt are in plain sight, and they pose a conundrum, an inexplicable conundrum. Who the hell built them? And just like the UFO issue, there's a hell of a lot of evidence that everybody's been ignoring and sticking their head in the sands on. Coming to today's hearing, well, I wouldn't say it was groundbreaking. I wouldn't say it was momentous. But boy, there was something special about, I think, a shift in the room. I think there was a sense of change in the determination and the attitude of the Congress. It's quite clear that a number of congressmen, congresswomen are determined to get to the bottom of this UAP issue. And let's put today's hearing in context. Before we get into the nitty-gritty detail of the hearing, let's put in context that President-elect Trump has announced John Ratcliffe, the former director of national intelligence, as his new head of the CIA. And Ratcliffe has been extremely outspoken on the subject of UAPs. He's indicated very strongly that he thinks that there needs to be greater transparency and accountability. And just in the last few minutes, I've heard that Tulsi Gabbard from Colorado, the representative from Colorado, has been chosen by President Trump to be the director of national intelligence. That's quite a momentous turn of events. I can imagine there are people in the Defense Department and the CIA Office of Global Access in particular, who are quaking in their boots, turning on the shredders, getting ready for the imminent possibility of demands by the Congress for information. I mean, I think the simple fact is that we're in a position where the maintaining of the status quo by those who keep on wishing to keep this secret is no longer sustainable. I get the impression that not only are congressional representatives getting frustrated and impatient, they are actually at the point now where they're determined to get access to information. What did I think of the speakers today? Look, I didn't hear anything new. I do think that, frankly, the issue will always be with the House Oversight and Accountability Committee public hearings that nothing can be discussed that hasn't been pre-approved in a DOPSA, in a Defence Office pre-publication security review. And in this case, a lot of people are saying online they're very frustrated that there's been no more revelations from Lou Elizondo in particular. But the guy is constrained by his DOPSA. He's not allowed to reveal anything that he's not authorized to reveal. Otherwise, that puts him in breach of his security oath. Just letting my producer, Alex, know that if we are showing private chat comments, I'm not getting any at the moment. I'm just having a look. Give me 5 seconds. Now I'm having a look. Now I'm getting some. So let me quickly have a look at what you guys are asking. When is this thing to space supposed to go to air? The Earth is bigger than we know. Elizondo is a shill like Rush. Oh, go away, you boring twat. I can't be bothered with people who are insulting to people who are patriots. I just don't think people realize the depth and the level of the commitment that these people are making.
Are you read into secret UAP?
So that's an interview. That's an exchange with Lou Elizondo that my colleague Alex has just put on the screen. Let's have a listen to this. This is one of the excerpts from Lou's testimony today.
Okay. Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSA process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Now that, I think, even though Lou didn't answer it, is probably the most momentous question and answer of the evening. Think about it. Why can't Lou Elizondo answer the question, was he read into a program involving crash retrievals? If he can't answer it, if he could answer it, he'd probably say no. If he can't answer it, it probably means he'd have to say yes. And my bet is that Lou Elizondo was read into a legacy retrieval program. I think you should just ponder the significance of that for a moment. Why would Lou Elizondo be read into a retrieval program? There was another moment, I think it was Jared Moskowitz asked Elizondo what his most previous role was in the Defense Department. And it was a long-winded title, and I guess a lot of people might have missed it. But essentially, he was involved in the management of an SAP. And did you notice that it was at White House level? Just have a think about that. This is a person who a lot of people keep on dismissing in a really, I think, quite disgraceful way. Lou is a patriot. He's somebody who's sticking his neck out for you to get the truth and to get oversight by the Congress. And frankly, I don't think he deserves to be treated with disrespect. Let me get on to some of more of these questions. Somebody says here, I'm not really sure what Gold brought to the table today. Seemed like an opportunistic move to get more funding for NASA. That's Surfing Stephen. Look, yeah, I find of all of the speakers, I find Michael Gold the most underwhelming in terms of the information that he actually had to offer. But what I thought was the most interesting thing that he said is that there is an extensive archive that could be drawn upon inside NASA that would allow more insights to be obtained about UAPs. And that's, to me, an extraordinarily important point to make, because NASA is an extraordinarily well-resourced organization that has deep space assets. It's got long-range cameras. It's got assets that are being deployed both looking out towards space and back in towards the Earth. And if the allegations contained in the Immaculate Constellation document are all true, and I strongly suspect they are, then frankly, the implications are that we're picking up things on our space sensor systems that are extraordinarily important. And all that is needed is a change of attitude inside NASA to start taking this issue seriously. And I think that's the significance of today's hearing, that you're now seeing, I think, a kind of a shift in the room. People are now engaging in a way.
Archives of data, much of which I believe will likely have information that will.
This is Michael Gold. He's the former member of the NASA team that investigated the UAP issue, and frankly, I think they did a bit of a wet lettuce of a report. But just here, have a quick listen to what Michael Gold said.
NASA has whole archives of data, much of which I believe will likely have information that will help inform UAP. We need only look. And again, in an era with AI and ML, we can relatively quickly and easily go through it. So I think it's something that we should encourage NASA to do.
Now, I think NASA actually is a key to a lot of this. I personally believe from my own sources that NASA, or at least individuals in NASA, are colluding to stop the public from knowing about things that are seen by their space sensor systems. I've actually seen it myself. I had a visit to a space center in the course of this year, and in the course of our visit, I was with someone who knew NASA very, very well, and we were being given a VIP tour of a NASA facility. And in the course of that tour, we were looking at imagery from the space station, looking out towards outer space. And in the course of our conversation with a very senior official from NASA, a number of egg-shaped objects drifted into view. And I asked them, I thought, oh, that must be the Starlink. It must be Starlink satellites that have recently been deployed. And I said, oh, are they Starlink satellites? And the person turned and looked very, very surprised and said, no, they're not. Then he looked across to the control room and they flicked a switch and it immediately went to transmission to the space station has been interrupted. I can't say definitively what those objects were, but I think I maybe have seen NASA turning off the switch. Let me have a look here.
Hey, Ross, this is your producer, Alexandra. I've got a couple of questions for you if you're ready for me.
Sure, fire away.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are asking right now, what is the next step?
Okay, well, that's a good starting point. Look, today's hearing, I think, was window dressing. It was an opportunity, I think, for the representatives in the lower house to basically have their moment in the sun. And good on Nancy Mace. I think she's been fantastic. She showed fire in demonstrating her willingness to engage on this issue. That, to me, is the most important thing about this, that we've now got representatives that have got the bit between the teeth, they've got red meat, and they're ready to fire on it. And that's significant. What's going to happen now? I think we should be watching what's coming up next in the Senate, because Senator Gillibrand has indicated very strongly that she thinks she wants a hearing after the election, post-election. I heard the rumor that it might be as early as late November. And I think a hearing of her subcommittee of the Senate Intelligence Committee could very well be, I think, a momentous change. That's what I think comes next. I'm working on something at the moment that will be coming to air in sometime, hopefully towards the end of this year, that I hope will be making a significant contribution. I'd like to see also further delving into the allegations raised in the Immaculate Constellation report. Having seen the report now, it's been tabled and a copy of it has been posted by Nancy Mace. And what's really interesting about that report to me is that it was vetted and approved for release, not by the Defense Department, but by the Department of State. And that told me something. It indicated to me for the first time something I've suspected for a while, that the source is somebody I think I'm aware of who operates in a particular government department that may or may not be the Department of State. So I think if that's the case, it's extraordinarily significant and important. And I would like to see those allegations in the Immaculate Constellation report fully investigated. Whoever's put that report together has done a lot of information dumping. There are even file numbers that would allow any proactive searcher to go and find the files that they are referring to. That is extremely important. And I strongly suspect that that person, having been deposed in a hearing, having provided that evidence to the Congress, I strongly suspect that that person has given much, much, much more detail in private hearing. Just so you know, I'm aware of individuals who have given evidence, particularly to the Senate Intelligence Committee. There's been a hell of a lot happening behind the scenes in the last few months, and I'm sorry, I know people get frustrated about this. The simple fact is that a lot of this evidence has to be given in a secure SCIF, because these people are patriots, they're national security constrained employees, often of the Defense Department, former or serving, and they don't want to breach their security oath. But the interesting thing is, legally, these committees, particularly the Senate Intelligence Committee, are allowed to hear their evidence in a secure room, a SCIF, a secure facility that allows the evidence to be heard with all the legal and secrecy protections. And I know for a fact that people have testified before the Congress and particularly to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Let's have a look at any more questions. I'm just scrolling forward on an enormous list of questions that I've got here in front of me. Are there any that you think we should be focusing on, Alex?
Yes, Ross, our team here at News Nation was talking about Elizondo's comments about seeing biologics from before he was born. I see some other people are asking about that too, wondering if that could potentially be some type of connection to Roswell.
Well, that's speculative. I don't know for sure. But Lou is, and he's acknowledged this to me in the interview that he did for News Nation. He is an experiencer. And I know that he's had things that he doesn't want to talk about publicly happen to him. And so have, interestingly enough, a lot of the people who've been involved in investigating the UAP issue. The simple fact is that something is taking an interest in the people who are investigating it. And that includes not just government officials, but frankly, I think anyone who engages with the phenomenon. There is this thing called the hitchhiker phenomenon. Talking of biologics, by the way, did anyone catch the craziest question of the evening? And I'm not saying that in a pejorative way. The claims made by Congresswoman Lauren Boebert from Colorado. And she asked, there are rumors that have come up to the Hill of a secretive project within the DoD involving the manipulation of human genetics with what is described as non-human genetic material, potentially for the enhancement of human capabilities and hybrids. Are any of you familiar with that, yes or no? No, nobody gave her any kind of wow answer, but that is one hell of an allegation, that this is an allegation that has come to the attention of the Hill, of the Congress. Watch that space. No, anything more, Alex, that I should know about? I'm finding it very hard to monitor what the comments are.
Yes, we're getting a lot of comments here. Somebody is asking the importance of the documents submitted.
Oh, okay. So this document, the Immaculate Constellation document, is not an official government document. That's been a misnomer. A lot of people have thought that this was some kind of top secret compartmentalized document. It is a summary by someone I think I know now that I know that they had the clearance done by the Department of State. And I think that what they have done is a summary of documents that they became privy to in the course of their work. There are a lot of people who have contacted me and other journalists, including my friend and colleague Michael Schellenberger, who are aware of tangential issues relating to the program because of the degree of access they've had in the course of their job. And some of them are too frightened to talk about what they've heard because, look, to be honest with you, they're patriots. They don't want to jeopardize inadvertently by speaking out about something, some kind of program that they're frightened of speaking about because it might actually compromise sources or, human intelligence or methods and means by which we obtain this intelligence. And that's something that we have to be mindful of. I do think we need to be respectful of people for why they decide not to speak about something. So just to emphasize, the Immaculate Constellation document is not an official government document, but the information within it. I recognize a lot of the names and terms and censor systems that are described by that person. They are extremely well informed. And if they are the person that I now think I know who they are, then they deserve to be protected and they must be listened to. I'm just looking at a question here that somebody's asked me, and I do think it's an important question. Ross, do you think there is some sort of fight between the government and private technology contractors about that UAP technology? Bloody hell, I do. Absolutely there is. What's going on at the moment, and I know this is going on, is you've got the CIA Office of Global Access is running a counter-disinformation operation to try and stop you, the public, from knowing about this issue. We are now very, very close to this spilling. There are a lot of people coming forward to me and others saying what they know. And they're very, very willing to testify, certainly in camera, to the Congress, particularly to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Speaking in public might not be at this stage a really good idea because, frankly, if they do try and speak in public, they get constrained by the national security oath that limits what they can reveal within the compartmented information that they're allowed to discuss that's been approved by, say, a DOPSA application. What's really significant about the Immaculate Constellation document is that it was not approved by the Department of Defense. And I just wonder if they've been wrong-footed. As I understand it, when you do a DOPSA request, when you're asking for permission to speak and make an application to the Defense Office of Pre-Publication Security Review, the equivalent in the State Department, I don't know what its systems are, but I presume it does what the Defense Department does, which is write to the affected agencies and ask them whether they have any objections to the release of this information. And it's really interesting that in the Immaculate Constellation document, certain censor systems, capabilities have been revealed. I'm told they are particularly accurate. I can't speak to all of the document because, frankly, I'm just not across the detail of all of it. A lot of people, I notice, it's becoming very fashionable to take a kick at Lou Elizondo on the way through. I have absolutely no time for those people. They have no understanding of the sacrifices that a patriot like Lou Elizondo is making. It's becoming a bit of a bore, frankly, that people feel that they can give a kicking to Lou. And I think all they're doing, frankly, is playing to the trolls who have been played by disinformation operatives within the Defense Department, notably Susan Gough, who are basically trying to shut down public commentary on this issue by running a diversion operation on Lou Elizondo. Don't buy it, guys. Really, don't buy it. You are being fooled. You are deliberately being misled so that you get off the trail. It's absolutely imperative that you keep the heat up on these buggers, because if you don't, they're going to cover it up again. There is still, I think, a serious possibility that even with the pressure that's coming from Congress, under Trump, even with a DNI like John Ratcliffe, and not a DNI, a CIA director like John Ratcliffe, and a DNI like Tulsi Gabbard, there's still a possibility that Trump might be intimidated by forces within the defense and intelligence community who impress upon him, as they have done with other presidents, why this information should not be released. We've got to keep the heat up. Whatever the information is, as I think it was Lou Elizondo said. No, it was Michael Schellenberger. Michael Schellenberger gave a great quote that I think I might get Alex to run, where he basically talked about the fact that the public has a right to know this. Let's have a listen to Michael Schellenberger. You got that one for us, Alex?
UATP task force. This is completely absurd. It's nuts, this level of censorship, of redaction on a document. It shows the redaction of how many reports they've collected, for how many years. 2 of the 3 potential explanations are blacked out. The Pentagon, the intelligence community is treating us like children. It's time for us to know the truth about this. I think that we can handle it.
We can handle the truth. One of the questions that I noticed somebody has asked in the questions is, Ross, can you reveal the large UAP building to Schellenberger so that he can go anonymous? It's a funny question. I can't reveal it to Michael Schellenberger, but I have revealed it to people who are in a position to have the clearances to be allowed to know, and that has been done. That's all I'm going to say. There are people who are in a position to investigate this, and I know that they're in possession of the information, and I know that they're investigating it.
Hey, Ross, this is Alexandra again. A few people on here are asking about David Grush and why he wasn't at the hearing today.
Okay, look, frankly, again, with David Grush, if David had been called in a public hearing before the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, most of the time he would have had to have done what Lou had to do, which is say, I'm really sorry, I can't answer that question. David's trying to get approvals for further information to be revealed in his new DOPSA applications. A lot of people see that there's something sinister in DOPSA applications. They think that somehow because he's making applications to the Defense Department to get permission to talk about things, that's somehow some kind of game where the Defense Department is playing David. Not true. The simple fact is David's only allowed to reveal publicly in a public hearing forum like the House Oversight and Accountability Committee what he's allowed to reveal. He can reveal, I mean, technically, legally, David in a secure skiff can go into the Senate Intelligence Committee, as he has done, and reveal all. I don't mean to be disrespectful to the people watching this, but you guys are largely irrelevant to the processes of oversight and accountability in the Congress. The Congress has checks and balances on executive power. And because of the nature of the intelligence community and the secrets that have to be protected, we do have to protect human sources. We do have to protect sources and methods. And as a professional journalist, I am legally obliged, ethically obliged to protect that as well. But David can and has done testify in camera to the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he has given hours and hours and hours of evidence where he has quite literally detailed where craft are being hidden, who are hiding those craft, the code names of the programs that are being used to conceal those craft. That detail has been provided to the Senate Intelligence Committee. So if you've got frustration, if you're really angry about why nothing's proceeding with this, you should be asking your congressional representatives in both the House Oversight Committee, the House Intelligence Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the House Armed Services Committee. It's those representatives in the Senate and the House who know the information that has been provided by David Grush and other witnesses in camera, where they're legally allowed to do that. And you should be asking the question of them. Why aren't you doing something with the information that we know has been provided in camera? David Grush has said he's provided, I think, 14 hours or 11 hours of evidence. He's provided an enormous amount of information. He's not legally allowed to reveal all in a public way that would allow our potential adversaries, Russia, China, from getting any kind of strategic advantage. And there are good reasons for doing that. Let me know if you've got any other questions, Alex. I'm just going on down.
Yeah, Ross, this is Alex again. A few people have asked where to watch the UAP hearing from this morning. News Nation did stream that on our YouTube page. So if you head over to News Nation YouTube, you can find that under live replays. And that's also where you'll be able to find this live replay once we're chatting here today.
Sure. Don't forget also, a lot of people are asking, where do we go from here? What came out of today? Why was it significant? To me, what was significant was that Lou Elizondo was able to give evidence under oath. He's told the Congress under oath he's subject now to criminal penalties if he has lied, knowingly lied. He's told them that he is aware of the existence of a UAP craft retrieval program and reverse engineering program. Now, that is exactly what David Grush testified to. That's extraordinarily significant. You now have two people with extremely detailed alleged knowledge of this program testifying to the Congress under oath that they are aware of the existence of such a program. That's what Congress needs to start now properly investigating. I'm just scrolling down. A lot of people here are making insinuations about Michael Gold being a plant. That's not the case at all. I thought Michael Gold's enthusiasm for the UAP subject was commendable. He's somebody, we should be grateful for anyone who's prepared to stick their head up above the parapet and prepared to say, yeah, I'm a public official, I'm a public servant, I've got security clearances, and I'm prepared to say, I think that this should be investigated, and this is where you can find this evidence. That's what Michael Gold was doing. Good on him for speaking about it. He wasn't hugely, overwhelming in what he revealed, but I still think that it was significant that he was prepared to testify. I do agree here, somebody, Luna Castle, saying Gold wasn't asked the questions regarding NASA's UAP report that he should have been, namely, were any conclusions suppressed or was access to relevant data blocked for any reason. That is one very well-informed point. I thought the NASA report was just a piece of limp lettuce. It was a joke. And, I know for a fact that NASA's sitting on evidence that it knows relates to the UAP subject. It may be that not everybody at a very senior level in NASA knows about it, but there are certainly gatekeepers for the legacy program who are operating in stealth inside NASA, monitoring what's being seen and making sure that the UAP program gets to know about it. The interesting thing is I've spoken to very senior people in NASA, both in a former and serving capacity, who tell me that they are completely unaware of any kind of UAP legacy program. They haven't been briefed into it. And you would think that they would have been. But the interesting thing is, my sources tell me that 2 rungs below that very senior person, that person's a gatekeeper, controlling the flow of information on UAPs. That's how they do this. And I just think that's outrageous. Why, for example, couldn't a very senior person in NASA know about the existence of a non-human intelligence? Isn't that directly relevant to the expenditure of billions, if not trillions, of taxpayer dollars? Oh, boring. Elizondo is a counterintelligence operative. Yeah, Elizondo is a trained counterintelligence operative, but the person who wrote that is snidely insinuating that he's trying to dissemble and disinform. Grow up. We need first-hand witness testimony. Bring in the executives from Lockheed, Boeing, Honeywell, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics. Absolutely. I completely agree with David, who's made that point. We do need to put these people under oath. And I've forgotten who it was. It might have been Nancy Mace, who suggested that it was time for people to be subpoenaed, potentially hostile witnesses, to be called before the Congress and put under oath and asked the hard question. Another person I'd add to that list is Admiral Thomas Wilson, retired, the man who received the alleged Wilson Davis memo, who has so far denied the accuracy of its contents. I'd like to see him put under oath and see if he's prepared to lie and commit perjury and deceive the American public. I think that would be a very interesting Q&A. Are aliens going to kill anyone? No, I don't think that's true at all. I don't see any indication at all of any malevolence from what I hear from people. Somebody says here, I was a bit disheartened after this. It seemed to falter. I agree. It lost puff halfway through. But they're making the point that, and this is M1, hearing about Gabbard being appointed will hopefully put their feet to the fire. I totally agree. I mean, it's pretty cool. I mean, whatever you think of Donald Trump, the fact that he's appointing these people who are so definitively pro-UAP disclosure to key positions like the CIA director and the director of national intelligence is going to put not just the wind of change, it's going to put the blowtorch of change through the complacent. I can't say what I want to say because I am so angry with these people. I might swear, and I know you Americans don't like cussing. I am so angry about the arrogant, hubristic jerks that are controlling access to this information. My understanding is that they're relying on the legality of their actions being based on a presidential executive order dating back to, I think, either 1952 or 1954 under Eisenhower. The same Eisenhower who warned about the threat of the growing power of the military-industrial complex. I don't think, and I'm not offering a firm legal opinion on this, I'm offering this without prejudice, but I don't think you can plausibly argue that a president can constrain other presidents from being told the truth about a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet. And that's what we're talking about here. Both Bill Clinton, former President Clinton, and Barack Obama have basically said that they were told that Roswell was not the crash of an alien spacecraft. I know that is a lie. Whoever told those two presidents that has lied. And I think those people one day should be hauled before these congressional committees and made to answer for their actions. And if they have knowingly committed a lie to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States, I think they should be prosecuted and criminally charged with treason. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump was thinking along those lines. I hope he is. Maybe that might scare these people into being a little more forthcoming. I'm scrolling down. Anything I need to know, Alex, at your end? I'm trying to catch up and read while I'm talking.
No, Ross, it looks like you've answered most of the questions. Obviously, we're getting thousands at this point, but I think anything that's popped up, you've pretty much addressed. So
here's one.
You'd like to wrap up?
J of B, Ross, how important was it that Lou was able to get the fact that UAP have affected our nuclear weapons onto the record? It was extremely important, but obviously it's already a matter of public record. Are some of the UAPs people are seeing possibly living biological systems? Ooh, that's a very interesting question. If you look at the jellyfish UFO, what the hell is that? And if you read, by the way, read the Immaculate Constellation document, and you will see a very detailed report, about the jellyfish UFO. Interesting. A lot of people were pouring, how does one say this politely? They were pouring shade on the jellyfish UFO video. But there is a jellyfish UFO video described on the border between the US and Mexico, which was, I think, picked up by a surveillance aircraft. And it is quite clearly described in the Immaculate Constellation document. I think that deserves further investigation. Here's Eduardo saying, I hope Trump fires those people making the whistleblowers look bad and lie to the public. I'm with you, Eduardo. The people who are helping us reveal this secret are patriots. One day there is going to be a reckoning. And I think I'm beginning to think it's going to come a lot sooner than we all expected because of what's happening with President-elect Trump making these key appointments. I'm getting more and more optimistic as the week goes on. There really are some momentous appointments. I'm just going to have a look at a couple more questions. And if I can't see anything here, I might call it a night. Yeah, no, oh, Ross, I'm curious. Have you, this is Jimmy's asking, have you legitimized the source that there's a UAP building with Google Earth imagery or a personal visit? I haven't done a personal visit, but yes, I have seen satellite imagery, and moreover, I have independently corroborated the accuracy of what I'm alleging with multiple sources. I'm in no doubt about it, guys. Yep, I think we can call it. I thank you all for taking part in this live Q&A. My summary is, I don't think this was a groundbreaking evening or morning, but I do think that it was an event that shows that the Congress has got steely resolve. They've got the bit between their teeth and they're determined to keep on asking the questions. What's up next? The Senate is possibly, or actually we're told it's definitely having a hearing. And after that, well, one of the things that was flagged by Michael Gold, I noticed, was that he's participated in a film that a producer by the name of Dan Farrar is making, and he named himself, Michael Gold, Lou Elizondo, and 30 other senior officials as being involved in that film. Now that Michael's talked about it, I'm going to talk about it. I'm aware of that film. I'm very excited about it. I'm told there are some extremely senior figures, including former very senior government officials, making quite extraordinarily declaratory statements about an NHI presence on this planet. Thank you very much for joining me on Reality Check. I look forward to talking to you soon.
And when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally, believe it or not. So.
All right. And then do you believe there's an active disinformation campaign within our government to deny existence of UAPs, yes or no?
I don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes.
I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay, thank you. I have a few questions for Mr. Graves. What percentage of UAP sightings, in your belief, go unreported by our pilots?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting, perhaps.
So like 95% basically don't report seeing UAPs?
That's just my personal estimate.
In the incident off Virginia Beach, do you believe the Navy took the danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened, and it just sat somewhere in a file. Never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grush, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning. What percentage of UAPs do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S. government, of the 5% that are reported?
I can only speak for my personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage. So.
Do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
There are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not sure what they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
We live in the Matrix. It's just much more boring than the movie.
The whistleblower who says he stumbled upon a top-secret UFO program collecting UFO images and videos from classified military servers is revealing some of what he saw for the very first time. In an interview with investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell on his Weaponized podcast, former U.S. National Security official Matthew Brown describes but does not provide several videos that he says were gathered by the program called Immaculate Constellation. Brown claims that one video in particular stood out to him. He says he saw video of a UFO that looked like a large disc flying over what appears to be an ocean. He says it looked playful, that it was flying between the clouds and appeared startled at one point, as if it knew it had been caught on video.
What do you mean it looked startled? What does that mean?
You know, it's just looking at an area over the ocean is what it appears. And this thing just comes trundling along from, like underneath the cloud cover, comes up. And then right when it's like almost center frame, it scoots off to the side and like tries to get out of,
like it comes into us earlier and going, oops, somebody spotted me. I can get out of here.
Exactly. It was visibly, that's the feeling it had.
Brown says he doesn't know what that UFO is, whether it is actually a UFO or one of our own or one of our adversaries or just something not of this world. So yes, we still don't know what these UFOs are or where they come from. But at the end of the podcast, Brown proposed his own theory. He claimed the government knows and is hiding it from the public, leaving, quote, normal people behind.
Think they live here?
Yes.
For all intents and purposes?
Yes.
Always?
I don't know about always, but it certainly appears that they have been here for most of recorded history. I think they're both just as powerful as we think, but also less. And I think there is not a single they here. Certainly multiple factions of the same species, if not multiple species.
All right, joining us now is investigative journalist and co-host of the Weaponized podcast, Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy, first of all, did you see these videos yourself, or is he just describing them to you?
Well, actually, very interesting. A lot of people have seen these videos within the intelligence community. You have to remember that Matthew Brown is a whistleblower, and he's talking about Immaculate Constellation, which is the first thing that he got exposed to. However, I can tell you that with my investigations with George Knapp, over the last decade, we've been exposed to a lot of military film footage where we have seen some of the footage that Matthew describes. That wasn't in the IMCON or Immaculate Constellation report. This is footage that can be seen on some of the classified servers by anybody who has that access. Now, separate from that, people have leaked footage to me and George Knapp. That is not the case with Matthew Brown, but we were able to hear what he said and know that some of that footage does exist because I and George Knapp, we both have been exposed to some of it.
All right, so for example, the footage that he described showing a disc that appeared playful with the clouds and then startled to be caught on camera, have you seen that?
Yeah, I have seen that.
And is it as he describes?
It is. I've seen it a long time ago, way before I ever met Matthew, and that is a piece of footage that within the intelligence community, if they have access to the servers, is kind of famous at this point. Now, does that get out to the public? Remember, this is something where, as journalists, we can't solicit. But over the years, as I said, George Knapp and I have been exposed to a whole lot of footage, most of which we've never deemed able to put out. for security reasons.
You know, we've seen so many of these videos where we're not really sure what we're looking at, but he claims to you that the government knows exactly what we're looking at and is just not telling us.
Most certainly, and we need to kind of separate these differences. Where in the part of the interview you showed towards the end, we're asking Matthew Brown to give us his kind of conclusions, his personal opinions. There's one side of reporting where we just go through the facts of what he was exposed to. The other side, we're asking him to tell us his opinions on that, and that's made very clear in the interview. However, I will say this about Matthew Brown. Matthew Brown was exposed to the reality of UAP in official capacity. He was also directly exposed to elements of the UAP cover-up, including even to Congress. He is a first-hand direct whistleblower to these facts. He did pre-publication. He testified behind closed doors. He has done everything right. He is exemplary. He is a patriot.
What do you make of that claim he made at the end of the clip we just played, where he thinks whatever this sentient life is, that it lives here, that it's been here for a long time?
Yeah, the idea that the UAP phenomenon is from somewhere else has always been the writing, prevailing theory, but there is also a tandem theory that has been with us for decades, which is that there's got to be some sort of launch and land location here on Earth, as if they live or have a base here on Earth. Now, they could have come from somewhere far away before, but there are indications, as you see from a lot of the footage that George Knapp and I obtain and release, there's a lot of places where the activity is high, which would indicate that there is some sort of base here on Earth.
Where?
Great question. Don't know, but we know there are hot spots. So the phenomenon is ubiquitous across the globe, but we have been reporting a whole bunch on a hot spot just off the coast of California.
Yeah, I seem to have, I don't know if it's because we've got a lot of naval aircraft carriers and ships and pilots who've been out over the Pacific and who have taken these videos, these strange videos. That does seem to be where we see a lot of these things, or at least, you know, things that people think are unusual could be completely normal and explainable, but we just don't know yet.
No, they're not completely normal. They're not explainable. That's why they get sent to George Knapp and myself. And we have done maybe 12, 13 of these out to the public so people could see. The reason you get more of them in those areas, because there's more hardware, there's more cameras, we have better sensor systems, we have ability to do thermal, infrared. So we're seeing an influx because our capture capabilities and technology is evolving, and that's why we're capturing more of them.
So, Jeremy, what do you say to the skeptics out there who say folks like Jeremy Corbell are looking for a conspiracy when there's nothing there, that you're just creating a conspiracy out of nothing?
Well, that's verifiably false. It would take way more than me to create something like the UFO phenomenon. That's a really cute kind of theory. But ultimately, what I'm doing is I'm reporting things as we learn them. And what we've learned is pretty darned extraordinary. And I'm really, consensus reality needs to catch up with actual reality. That's the aim here. We're in a data-rich environment. We can't have a data-poor perspective.
Absolutely. Jeremy Corbell, great to have you on as always. Thank you.
This release was the start. There's more coming.
Okay. We look forward to having you back on to talk about it. Thanks, Jeremy. Representative Tim Burchett is one of the lawmakers who will lead the oversight hearings into Grush's claims. Congressman, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, how believable do you find this whistleblower, David Grush?
I find him very believable, ma'am. He's a veteran. He served our country. Doesn't mean a lot in Washington, D.C., apparently, but in East Tennessee, it means a whole heck of a lot about people that served their country. He's decorated. I've known him for some while. We've been in contact for a good while. I've talked to so many other people, ma'am, that are risking their careers, literally, or their reputations, pilots that have chased these craft that we've seen on video that have no heat signature, that defy our laws of physics. I don't know how much more we can have of this. I really think what we're seeing now is the military machine is realizing there's some dollars out there, and our Pentagon, which loses over $1 billion a year in audits and nobody asks any question, is going to start asking us for more money to study the issue, when in fact, if they just release some of the files that they released to us that are so heavily redacted that they look like a piece of Swiss cheese, I just think we could get to the bottom of this a lot faster.
The House Oversight Chairman Comer has said he would ask you to lead the hearing on this. Any word on what that might happen, when that might happen?
Well, we're just trying to get confirmed folks here know that they can come in and testify. That's really the only holdup, ma'am. I'm not. Chairman Comer is very kind to me, and the Speaker McCarthy has also agreed that we could have this hearing, and I'm honored that they put me in charge of it. But that's really the only holdup right now, is making sure we get everybody and we get their dates there. I get tired of these. We're over COVID. I'm tired of all these Zoom meetings. I want bodies in chairs.
I'm assuming you're going to have David Grush there to testify, right?
We're going to try. We are going to try. I think what he has to be really careful of is crossing over that line of speaking about something that maybe is classified or not, or taking out of context. And so we're going to work with him and his folks, and hopefully get him here as well. I think he would be a real star.
And will you call on somebody from the Pentagon or the Department of Defense to come in? Because obviously what he's claiming is that there is a ultra top secret program, more top secret than the Arrow program that he was himself assigned to, that exists, that is keeping this information hidden from Congress and the American public.
I think at some time we will, ma'am, but the group that they put in charge of this, if you saw the Intelligence Committee that was open to the public, ma'am, they couldn't even spell UFO. They didn't have a clue about what's going on. And honestly, we really got hosed on that meeting, because they built it up as they always do, and it was absolutely nothing. They could not slow down a 22-second videotape. My little daughter, who will be 16 on Wednesday, she could have stopped that tape, and they couldn't even stop the tape to show allegedly what something was that was filmed with a cell phone inside of a canopy of an airplane. They just pulled something out. And if you look at the Tic Tac videos that are out, 60 Minutes did a big expose on it, and there's been multiple talk shows about it, and it has the actual Navy pilots. We had a Navy pilot that was in the audience but was not allowed to come in because they had to give him press credentials. That's the kind of garbage we're putting up with, ma'am. You know, these congressmen, we're just spoon-fed this little stuff, and as long as we get our big PAC checks, we're happy. And the American public's ticked off, and I'm ticked off. Let's get to the bottom of it. Let's start bringing some real people in there and quit with all the people that are covering up, asking them to fix the problem. Because, you know, dadgummit, they're not going to. All they're looking for is another check.
Representative Tim Burchett, thank you so much. Look forward to those hearings, and look forward to hearing back from you again on when those are actually happening.
All right, we want to welcome in our panel now to discuss this historic hearing. We have Dr. Stephen Greer. He's founder of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, also the Disclosure Project. We welcome in Professor of Science and Astrophysicist at Harvard, Avi Loeb, as well as retired U.S. Navy Chief Master at Arms and investigative filmmaker Sean Cahill. Thank you, all three of you, for being here. And I know all of you watched every moment of this today. Sean, I actually want to start with you, because you were an eyewitness to part of the Tic Tac incident that was described today. What is your reaction to the hearing today?
I was quite emotional watching the hearing today. It's been a very long battle to get this information out, to get it treated with respect and with dignity. A great deal of the information that was useful to most people is classified, and it required the pilots and other eyewitnesses to come forward. So I'm very heartened by what happened today. We have truly crossed the Rubicon. This is a very historic event.
Is there a moment in particular that made you particularly emotional today?
It was towards the end of one of the gentleman's speeches, where I believe it was Representative Burchett, where he acknowledged all of the people who have worked behind the scenes over the years to keep this alive and to not allow it to be obfuscated to the point where it was completely disregarded. I represent a great deal of those people, and I work with them every day, and you may hear it in my voice right now. We have truly achieved something revolutionary today, and I look forward to the results.
Yeah, I really feel that from you. And Dr. Greer, what stood out most to you today?
Well, I think it's gratifying. You know, I've been briefing people like the CIA director for Bill Clinton since 1993, and been recommending hearings like this, open hearings. I will say there are a few points that need to be explored. One is, Mr. Grush actually can speak about anything he found out about these projects, because we can prove in a court of law that they've been run illegally. In other words, senior people in the White House, Pentagon, Congress, Senate Intelligence Committees that I've met with have been denied access. So therefore, the National Security Act is vitiated in terms of secrecy, so long as those programs are being run illegally, and they are being run illegally. I can say that with some direct authority. And secondly, I think it's very important for people to understand there are two types of UAPs. There are the man-made ones, no question. My uncle was lifetime Northrop Grumman, worked on the lunar lander module. I think we have to understand that a significant part of the phenomenon is actually clandestine but illegally managed human reverse engineered advanced technologies, as they're called, ATs. And some are non-human intelligence, there's no question. So I think this needs to begin to be looked at more critically in terms of what part of the phenomenon falls under which category.
I mean, it's fascinating, and what a can of worms. We could be talking about this for the rest of the show. I do want to get to Professor Loeb. What is your reaction to the hearing today?
Well, I think what's most important is the evidence, the information, the factual information that we heard. You can think of yourself as a member of a jury, learning about what the witnesses are talking about and trying to decide whether it's credible and what your verdict might be. To me, the existence of materials and potentially objects that were retrieved by the US government is of greatest significance, because if it's true, this information should be shared with scientists. The government is not a scientific organization. The government should not hide the existence of neighbors in our cosmic environment. This is a subject that scientists should be engaged in, and in fact I am. The sky is not classified, the oceans are not classified. This has nothing to do with national security, because anything coming from thousands of light years away doesn't care about how we split the land on this rock. We need to know whether such a thing exists, and for us to figure it out, it should be a matter of science. So let's forget about people dealing with people, which was a lot of the discussion. What we need to worry about is, what do we have as material evidence? Let's look at it and study it scientifically. And I very much hope the government will release that information and provide it to scientists like myself. I lead the Galileo project, which is aiming to bring clarity to this subject.
Sean, I want to go back to you with the time we have left. What is the most important thing that you think was left out from today's hearing, and where we should go next?
Well, I agree with Dr. Greer and Dr. Loeb on the importance of the scientific efficacy and providing evidence. As a law enforcement officer for 20 years, we need to see this as a law enforcement operation. Mr. Grush is the reporting officer. The evidence is very important, but the people's stories and the people's observations of these events are equally as important. So marrying the technical data with the observational and anecdotal data will be the most important part of this going forward, I think.
Welcome back. Congress returning to the Capitol and revisiting the topic of UFOs. Today's House Subcommittee hearing on UFOs, what the government now refers to as unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, was the first in more than a year. News Nation's Joe Khalil live for us on Capitol Hill. Joe, you were in the room for that more than 2-hour hearing. What did you learn?
Well, I can tell you this. If you are someone who is not familiar with this phenomenon, with this topic, what you heard in there was bombshell. There were multiple people, witnesses, who under oath, and these are former military officials, some, talking about a program that exists within the government to retrieve crashed UFOs or UAPs that have been made by non-human intelligence. Take a listen to one of the exchanges that played out during this hearing.
If these technologies are not made by any government, who's making them? Private companies, or are you implying they are crafted by a non-human intelligence?
Well, ma'am, that's precisely why we're here. The problem is that, temporally speaking, over decades, not just the last 10 years, before, to put this in perspective,
Are these private companies you're implying, or is this non-human intelligence?
It may be both.
Okay.
When it comes to Blue Force Technologies, I would not be able to discuss.
Okay. Are you read into secret UAP crash retrieval programs?
We would have to have a conversation in a closed session, ma'am. I signed documentation 3 years ago that restricts my ability to discuss specifically crash retrievals. I submitted for my book through the DOPSR process, which took a year for it to be reviewed. And what is in the book is what I was told I'm allowed to talk about.
Has the government conducted secret UAP crash retrieval programs, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Were they designed to identify and reverse engineer alien craft, yes or no?
Yes.
So those two yeses right there at the end, Very important there. Now, just shortly after that hearing, that was Congresswoman Nancy Mace chairing this and really running the show. We talked to her after the hearing. This is what she said in terms of what she got out of it. So all of the witnesses today and last year, the same thing, their consensus was there is a program that tries anyway to reverse engineer craft that is of non-human origin. Given everything you've heard from witnesses who've said this under oath, are you convinced that that is the case, that that is actually happening?
Well, it's hard to say. We've had now 2 hearings where people have made this allegation, made this statement as a fact. And so I haven't seen I don't have the documentation. I don't see an actual physical vessel or a reverse engineered vehicle. That would be foolproof to say, yes, this is what's happening. But this, again, is just the tip of the iceberg. We've only had 2 brief hearings on it. There's more work to be done. I think the success of this hearing today will mean that there'll be more hearings in the future, greater investigation, and hopefully more whistleblowers to come forward.
So obviously, Nicole, a lot there. Again, especially if you have not been familiar with this topic before. Now, of course, the Pentagon, the Department of Defense, they deny that any of these programs exist. Even the ARROW, which is now the agency within the Pentagon that is tasked with investigating these kinds of things, also says they've got no evidence these kinds of programs exist. Congress, obviously, they say they're going to continue to push and try to get more answers on this topic, Nicole.
All right, Joe Khalil, live for us there on Capitol Hill. Joe, thank you.
Very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But it was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate, as they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think, that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a, if we could get in a confidential area, skiff, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access to the skiff, and that's very unfortunate in this scenario. Mr. Favor.
Million drones registered in the United States, and estimated that there are more than 8,500 drones flown legally across the country every day. I've even seen some of these drone incursions firsthand during my time in the South Carolina Air National Guard. However, these incursions are not from hobbyists being blown off course. The multitude of drones reported flying over bases in the past several years revealed a coordinated effort by our adversaries to collect valuable intelligence and surveillance of some of our most sensitive military equipment. These incursions often are designed to disrupt important trainings and create chaos for a number of reasons. Number one, base commanders have inadequate or non-existent monitoring capabilities. 2, a near total lack of counter-drone capabilities. 3, unclear standard operating procedures to guide base commanders' responses and decision-making. And finally, 4, ambiguous legal authorities both on and off base. This threat is magnified by the complex regulatory and prosecutorial framework that was patched together by the previous administration in what I would argue is a poor attempt to address this issue. Right now, the Department of Defense, Federal Aviation Administration, Intelligence Community, Department of Justice, and Department of Homeland Security are all involved in some aspects of the Counter-UAS efforts. As a result, there is no agency with primary authority on countering drone incursions, leading to confusion and, more importantly, gaps on how to identify and mitigate this threat. This interagency failure was on full display last winter when hundreds of drones were spotted in the skies above New Jersey and other parts of the Northeast. After several temporary flight restrictions and mass confusion among state, local, and federal partners, the Biden administration provided the public no answers what was happening above them. However, with only a few weeks of the current administration taking office, they revealed that the drones over New Jersey were actually authorized by the FAA. This instance raises multiple questions as to why the previous administration left the American people in the dark for over a month when they knew the simple truth. Another notable incident occurred at Langley Air Force Base in December of 2023. Over 17 days, unidentified drones repeatedly breached our sensitive military airspace, one of most America's critical installations. The F-22 Raptor squadrons were moved to alternate bases to lessen exposure, and discussions were initiated on installing physical countermeasures. These are not isolated incidents. In February, the commander of NORAD and NORTHCOM testified to Congress that there were over 350 detections of drones at 100 different military installations last year alone. Additionally, since 2023, 2 Chinese nationals have been arrested for illegally flying drones over military installations to conduct surveillance. One of these individuals was caught attempting to flee the U.S. and return to China with sensitive footage he had recorded. Today, this committee will hear from officials from the Department of Defense on what the Trump administration is doing to help combat this issue and bring an end to these illegal drone incursions. We must demand full accountability, expedited technological upgrades, and enhanced oversight to safeguard our sovereignty and ensure that our military remains unexposed to foreign surveillance and potential threats. I'm hopeful that our witnesses here today have suggestions on how Congress can help empower the right federal agencies to combat this problem and secure the skies above our military bases. I now recognize Ranking Member Subramaniam for the purpose of making an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this important hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today and for your service to our country and to making our airspace safe. It's clear that UAS is an issue right now. It's the future of warfare, from the war in Ukraine to our own military bases in the continental United States. We are seeing real time that UAS are redefining how battles are fought and how intelligence is gathered. And I believe it's been 350 drones that have been reported in the last year over 100 different military installations. That's 350 different potential national security breaches that we know of. These include highly sensitive sites such as nuclear facilities and major military bases, and that's a huge threat to our national security and the lives of our service members. And unfortunately, our lack of coordinated, effective response needs to be addressed immediately. And I know everyone here today wants to work on it and is planning on working on it. And so we're familiar with this issue in my home state and the Commonwealth of Virginia. In December 2023, service members at Langley Air Force Base in Virginia saw drones hovering over their airspace for 17 days. And Langley, for those who don't know, is home to key national security assets like the F-22 Raptor stealth fighter, and it plays an important role in keeping us safe here in our nation's capital. And so we also have some important naval assets in that area too. And these drones demonstrated complicated aerial maneuvers and didn't just broadcast on known frequencies, suggesting that they weren't just a local hobbyist making an innocent mistake. As far as we can tell in Congress, there was and still is not a cohesive or coordinated plan for how we're going to deal with this, but maybe we can learn more today about what's happening now and what we can do moving forward. Our job on this committee is to find answers to questions, and I have a lot. Who is piloting these drones, for instance? Are these criminal actors? Are these foreign adversaries? Are they simply local hobbyists with advanced capabilities? I'm not sure about that, but maybe that's the case. And what are they doing? Are they gathering intelligence? Are they probing for weaknesses? Are they planning an attack? And finally, what is our plan for dealing with them safely and effectively? Because these UAS are a clear and present danger to our national security, and we need to have a plan to counter them. There are several areas I'd like to focus on today. The first is counter-drone authorities. Right now, the U.S. law allows the Department of Energy, Justice, Defense, and Homeland Security to detect and respond to drone activities in certain situations, such as nuclear facilities, for instance, missile defense assets, or other covered facilities. But only around half of all military installations actually fall under this definition of covered facility, which is why I think this may be something we should look at for change. The second is counter-drone technologies. It's not just as simple as shooting them down, as we know. There are homes and businesses and parks near bases like Langley, and people live there, children play there. Shooting down drones could endanger people in these communities, especially if we don't know what payloads the drones may carry. And a missed shot could also pose a threat to commercial air traffic as well. And so, we need to find a way to safely counter some of these incursions. And we have other technologies at our disposal, like jamming and disrupting and even taking over unknown or hostile drones. But there's a lot of work to do to develop these capabilities, and some of that work actually takes place in my district in Northern Virginia. And with that said, I don't know of a silver bullet, and so it's going to take a coordinated effort, I think, at the state, local, and federal level. And so we're all going to have to work together because everyone's got different jurisdictions. And I'd like to, on that front, see if we can work together and maybe have some sort of task force in place so that information is easily gathered and where everyone's up to date on the latest technology as well as the best practices. And so this is a very timely hearing on an important issue, and I want to work with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to come up with a plan to protect our military bases and protect the American people. So I yield back.
Thank you for that. I'm pleased to welcome an expert panel of witnesses for today's discussion. I'd first like to welcome Rear Admiral Paul Spadero, the Vice Director for Operations, or J3, for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Mark Diddlifsen, who is the current Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the FAA is no longer testifying at today's hearing, but they have committed to answering in writing any questions that our members have. If any member has questions they would like to submit to the FAA following this hearing, please get them to staff for the FAA to answer. Now we're going to administer the oath to the witnesses. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please take your seat. Let the record show that the witnesses answered in the affirmative. We appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. Let me remind the witnesses that we will have read your written statement, and it will appear in full in the hearing record. Please limit your oral statement to 5 minutes. As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes have expired, and we would ask that you please wrap up. I now recognize Rear Admiral Spadero for his opening statement.
Good afternoon, Chairman Timmons, Ranking Member Subramaniam, committee members, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for your support and your oversight. Admittedly, several of my opening comments will echo those of the Chairman and the Ranking Member. The rapid emergence, proliferation, and employment of unmanned systems has fundamentally changed the way that both professional militaries as well as terrorist organizations conduct warfare. Over the last few years, we have seen the employment of unmanned systems, in particular unmanned aerial systems, in every major conflict, from the Russia-Ukraine war to Iran's attacks on Israel and attacks against U.S. bases and ships across the Middle East. And most tragically, an Iranian-supported militant group successfully employed a one-way attack drone on Tower 22 in Jordan, killing 3 U.S. service members and wounding 40 on January 27, 2024. Here in the homeland, as Assistant Secretary Diddlifsen will note in his opening remarks, the mass drone incursions over Joint Base Langley Eustis in December 2023 reminded us that the homeland is no longer a sanctuary. And should our adversary choose to employ drones for surveillance or even attack, we would not be prepared to adequately defend our homeland and only marginally capable to defend our military installations. The incursions over Joint Base Langley Eustis were not the first. They've not been the last, but they were the longest and the largest series of incursions that we have seen to date. In the comprehensive review of that event, as well as in the actions we took in follow-on incursions like those that occurred over Plant 42 in Palmdale, California, and over Picatinny Arsenal and Naval Weapons Station Earl in New Jersey, have resulted in improvements. But more action is needed, and the Joint Force has made Counter-UAS a priority line of effort. We are now better prepared to respond to incursions with the designation of Commander U.S. Northern Command and Commander U.S. Indo-Pacific Command as the operational synchronizers in their respective areas of responsibility. Last year, and within weeks of being assigned this role, General Guillot, the commander of U.S. Northern Command, released a comprehensive commander's assessment that has served as a roadmap to building the necessary command and control and standard operating procedures to address the drone threat. Over the last year, we have also invested in education and training against this threat. NORTHCOM has been the central driving force for the work being done by several organizations in partnership with industry to deliver the domain awareness and counter-UAS systems that we require. And lastly, we are progressing well in our completion of the counter-UAS tasks assigned to us in the fiscal year 25 NDAA. We appreciate your continued support and your oversight. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I will now pass to Secretary Diddlifsen.
Chairman Timmons, Ranking Member Subramaniam, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. The events of December 2023 at Joint Base Langley Eustis served to focus and energize DoD's counter-small UAS efforts in the homeland. During the event, DoD struggled to address the incursions in a timely and effective fashion, owing at least in part to challenges within the DoD and our ability to implement a relatively untested interagency coordination process. To some extent, those challenges from JBLE still exist. However, we have worked since then to improve and refine our processes and coordination efforts, and we have seen improvements in subsequent responses. I can assure the committee that the department is as frustrated by these events as you are. However, we can't simply focus on looking back and waste precious resources. As a department, we act, we review that action, we adjust, and we move out. Today, I'm here to tell you that we are continuing to move out. I'm confident that we are in a stronger position to defend DoD installations today than we were in December of 2023. We are fighting this threat on 3 fronts: internal process reviews, generating better domain awareness, and clarifying commander's authority and legislation. Internally, we must focus on the ability to provide response at the speed of relevance. The designation of U.S. NORTHCOM and U.S. INDOPACOM late last year as the counter-UAS operational synchronizers in their respective areas of the homeland was an essential step. We've developed more streamlined interagency coordination consistent with Section 130I. We are also conducting a comprehensive review, as requested in the FY25 NDAA Section 925, and where necessary, consolidating and updating DoD policy. This is an effort long overdue, and it provides us with direction and momentum. Lastly, working with our interagency partners, like our colleagues from the FAA, we have enabled DoD to sponsor facilities, which provide a critical mission to DoD but are not directly DoD facilities or assets. Second, generating better domain awareness is essential to developing an understanding of what is flying in our airspace and how to separate the negligent from the nefarious. This is the fundamental issue we saw at Langley in New Jersey. DoD is working through venues like the Joint Rapid Acquisition Cell, the JRAC, to rapidly acquire the right equipment and to give commanders better tools to understand the operating environment and the ability to effectively conduct non-kinetic and kinetic mitigations. Commander U.S. NORTHCOM phrased it this way in his posture hearing in February: "You can't defeat what you can't see." On the legislative front, we continue to engage with members of Congress to seek modest but important refinements to DoD's counter-UAS authorities under Section 130I. Our legislative proposal is intended to allow the department to protect additional locations and missions, add greater stability for long-term planning and resource allocation within the department, and facilitate improved understanding and cooperation among the U.S. interagency and local partners. Ultimately, I believe we need to address all these issues with end users in mind. Our installation commanders and the security personnel charged with the duties to protect our installations, our operations, and ultimately, our personnel. Lastly, the President of the United States has issued several executive orders directing the Department of Defense to take all appropriate and lawful measures to ensure the complete operational control of the border. The department, in turn, is responding by preparing the path for employment of counter-UAS activities along the border, both in support of DoD interests and in support of DHS as the lead federal agency. As the operational environment, legislation, and threats evolve, policy must adapt to ensure DoD's ability to continue to advance our national defense objectives remains. Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Subramaniam, and distinguished members of the committee, in conclusion, the Homeland continues to face increased and evolving threats from UAS. To address these challenges requires a whole-of-government approach and a unified effort. We must modernize the ability to assess the threat, determine its weaknesses, and acquire and deploy countermeasures. Thank you for the support of Congress and for your continued commitment and support of the Department of Defense. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Rear Admiral Spadero, how many drone incursions have taken place over U.S. military installations over the past 2 years? We got the number last time we had a briefing of 350, but have they grown, or what's the current data you're willing to share?
Yeah, so the exact number I'd be happy to share in a classified setting, but I can tell you that it has grown.
I'm actually curious, why did we get the 350 number in an unclassified setting? That was one of the questions I had.
It's a great question, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's do this. Can you discuss procedures that DoD has in place for a base commander when the base commander gets reports of an unauthorized drone incursion?
Yeah, so currently there is a standard operating procedure that's been published by the commander of U.S. Northern Command. So each base has been provided that standard operating procedure. The expectation is they will respond in accordance with the.
When was that? When was that created?
It was just published here recently, within the last month. It
Okay.
was finalized and published.
So what percent of base commanders have any technology to actually track drones as opposed to just, ooh, I saw a drone, and then you report it?
Yeah, so the capabilities at each base is varied. Again, the specifics for the individual locations would be better in a classified setting, but it is not comprehensive. I can tell you that it is not sufficient, and again varies from base to base, from very little to somewhat more comprehensive.
Is that something that Congress can help with authorizations and appropriations to get additional resources? Because I think that I would feel that most bases should have the, at the very least, the ability to track. Whether they have countermeasures is a different thing, but is that something that y'all need? You need additional money?
Yes, sir, absolutely. I think the development, fielding, the acquisition, distribution of domain awareness sensors is the critical first step. It's not the only thing. Obviously, we need a method to exert command and control so that we can build a common operating picture, because it will take layers of different sensors, because one sensor may be better against certain UAVs and certain flight profiles, and you may have to rely on different sensors to round out the picture. So being able to fuse all that together to get the complete picture will be necessary. And then, as you mentioned, getting to a point where we can actually respond, that's an entirely next investment that needs to be made. So yes, we do need more sensors. We're addressing the shortfall right now with the fielding of flyaway kits. So these will be kits that will be available for bases that have very limited capability to detect on their own and build domain awareness. And should they have an incursion that they're unable to resolve, they would solicit the help from Commander U.S. Northern Command, and this flyaway kit, as well as expertise and additional resources that would be required, would be immediately deployed to that location.
So I guess resources are probably fairly easy, and y'all are going to work on telling us what you actually need from a technology perspective. But the other side is the authority. So, I mean, does a base commander have clear authorities what they can and can't do relative to whether the drone is in their airspace or just outside their airspace? And is that as big or bigger of a problem?
So all of our installations have the authority that's afforded them under the standing rules of engagement and the standing rules for the use of force. In those rules, if they can establish that there's hostile intent or hostile act, then they not only have the authority, but they have the absolute right and responsibility to respond appropriately to protect themselves, forces, as well as DoD property. So those are standing rules that they have. Now, being able to discern hostile intent and hostile act, as referred to in the opening comments, may be very challenging. Is this negligent activity being conducted by someone just flying a drone irresponsibly, whether that is a recreational enthusiast or it is someone that's using a drone for commercial aspects? So it can be a challenge here in the homeland to determine that.
So a base commander has the authority to, for example, arrest a Chinese national that's a quarter-mile off base?
He does not have the authority to detain someone that is off base. He would have to coordinate with local law enforcement to apprehend someone that is operating a drone outside of the base. Now, I know Secretary Diddlifsen will talk about 130I authorities, which is something that we really do want to talk about today because I think it's important. But under 130I authorities, there is some additional room to respond. For a covered facility, merely the presence of that drone conducting unauthorized surveillance or suspected of conducting unauthorized surveillance or interfering with operations, as you referred to in your opening statement about the interference with F-22 operations, that would meet the standard for response rather than having to determine hostile intent or hostile act.
Thank you for that. My time has expired. I now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Subramanian, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to go back to something I mentioned a couple of times, which is what is a covered facility and a not covered facility. And Real Admiral Spadero, if you're not a covered facility, what does that mean? Like, does that impair your ability to respond? And what do covered facilities have that non-covered ones don't?
It's if you're not covered, you can request to be covered, but you'd have to meet the criteria to become a covered facility, and that is one of the problems with the 130I authorization is meeting the criteria for covered. An example of this would be Langley Air Force Base, where F-35 training takes place for roughly 3/4 of those that fly F-35s, and it is not a covered facility because training facilities are not covered. So it would be problematic to actually get approval for Langley Air Force Base to be a 130I. Now, as I mentioned earlier, under 130I, if a drone is conducting unauthorized surveillance or suspected even of conducting authorized surveillance, then the base commander would be able to respond to that. Unauthorized surveillance may or may not meet the criteria of hostile intent, which would give you the authority to respond under the standing rules of engagement and the standing rules for the use of force. So it relieves some of the burden on that base commander to determine that there is an imminent threat. If this is interfering with our operations, if this is giving a potential adversary a look at our base and our sensitive activities, then we have the authority to respond.
And mentioned before having to reach out to local jurisdictions if someone's operating UAS outside of a base, and what kind of coordination is currently being done with state and local jurisdictions? Is it sort of ad hoc, or is there like a process in place right now? And does federal law limit the extent of engagement with state and local? And how can we make that better?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So each base commander, one of his imperatives is to build relationships with the local community. That would include law enforcement agencies. It is covered extensively in all of the base commander courses. So they're part of their training and their education program before they assume command is building how to build those relationships, the importance, what the limitations of those are. So each individual base commander is responsible. There are additional lessons learned and protocols and best practices about how to engage law enforcement on this particular threat. But those occur at our bases and did occur at Joint Base Langley Eustis. They had a very tight relationship with local law enforcement, with sheriffs, police departments, as well as other federal agencies, law enforcement agencies that have capability in that area. And they did respond in concert together to try to apprehend individuals that were responsible for that drone activity over the base. So that it does occur, and it is very important.
And as far as technology and mitigation, what I don't know, maybe this is the right forum for this, but broadly, do you think there's technology gaps currently? And do you think that there's progress being made towards kind of filling those gaps? And what can we do, both in Congress as well as the private industry, to help kind of fill the gaps when it comes to technology for trying to address both kinetic and non-kinetic solutions?
Yeah, in general, the technology to field systems has far outpaced the technology to defeat those systems. It's a much wider, broader, deeper market for drone application for commercial and recreational purposes. So hence that technology has evolved very quickly from radio-controlled drones to now fully autonomous drones that may or may not even rely on reception of a GPS signal, which would make it very challenging to intercept. So on the counter-drone activity, you have to come back to agencies that would be interested in that, like Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, FBI, law enforcement agencies. So we have to partner and we have to create that demand within industry to get technology back on pace to counter this ever-increasing emergence of drone technology.
Do you feel like we have the personnel right now and the expertise in the country to be able to do this?
I think we've seen a good response. I'll defer to Secretary Diddlifsen. He can talk about DIU and other organizations that have really made a solid partnership with industry to advance this technology.
Thank you, Admiral. Yes, there's several different organizations within the DoD that are looking at this issue and moving out rapidly to acquire new capabilities, such as the JRAC, the Joint Counter-UAS Office, and DIU. All of those, this is a focus area and one of their primary lines of effort.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses. Admiral, thanks for your service. I want a yes or no from both of you. Are you aware of the August 2020 advisory? It's an advisory on the application of federal laws to the application and use of technologies to detect and mitigate unmanned aircraft systems. Are you two aware of that?
Yeah, no, sir. I'm not specifically aware of that.
No, if and when appropriate, I have a copy, and I'd like to admit that into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
So I believe that's the source of a lot of the problems that we have. In the military, we have something called paralysis by analysis. Obviously, the commanders at Langley and other bases have seen drones, and they failed to act because, and I believe the source of those problems is this August 2020 advisory. And I think I have a solution for it. I was recently at the southern border where I met with Tom Homan. I met with Border Control, ICE agents, mayors, sheriffs, business owners, 10th Mountain Division folks that are protecting our border from San Diego all the way to Texas. And I asked them, are you seeing drones come across the southern border and surveying our troops? And the answer was yes. And I said, is 130I working for you right now? And I know what they said, but Admiral, what do you think? Is 130I right now working for us?
So they don't have 130I. That's the first piece,
okay.
And we're working to resolve that. So, for instance, in the national defense areas that have just been established as an annex, it does not have 130I.
I'm going to get to a point.
Yeah.
And how about, do you have an opinion on 130I right now as of today?
Yes, Congressman, if we can get 130I implemented in these areas where Joint Task Force Southwest Border is operating, it should enable the commanders on the ground to have those expanded authorities that allow them to interdict and mitigate these UAS threats.
And I know you said you're working with Congress on legislation, so I'd like to talk to you about an idea on a piece of legislation. It may be something that involves judiciary and FAA, but let me run this across you. So we currently have troops on the border facing the cartels and our critical infrastructure. Now, of course, we've got Langley Air Force Base and other critical infrastructure as well. And, of course, we've got bad actors that have bought land next to our military bases. And they're surveilling us on a daily basis. And it's only a matter of time until we have our next 9/11, 9/11 terrorist attack. The problem is bureaucracy prevents action, but this time we know about it and we can fix it. And right now with 130I, the way it's proposed, you have to be observed or attacked and then ask for permission, and that takes delays. I've got an idea that might speed that up. 18 USC, U.S. Code 32, is treating remote control airplanes, which I call a drone. So 18 USC 32 is treating remote control airplanes or drones as if they're passenger airplanes. And they're not. Basically, the problem is the government has created a complex statutes to let a few bad actors possibly take action if you jump through 1,000 hoops. 130I. This is not good enough. We owe it to our military and our citizens to fix this. The United States provides better protection from UAS to Saudi Arabia than we do to our own citizens. And so my idea for a bill is you change the word from aircraft to manned aircraft. Because I think every commander is afraid that if I shoot down a remote control airplane or a drone, no one's going to back me up. I think I remember hearing the Langley commander say, are you guys going to back me up? Are you guys going to back me up? And no one answered. That may not be 100% true, but Admiral, do you have any comments on that idea?
Yeah, this is the burden of command, and you need to understand that if there is something that is assessed as a threat to your forces or your installation, then again, you not only have the authority but the responsibility to act. I would counter that they have authority right now on the southwest border to engage UAS. We have, in the last few days alone, reaffirmed that under the standing rules of engagement and the standing rules of use of force, when you take in the totality of the facts and the circumstances at the time, you have the authority. We know that cartels have used UAS for unauthorized surveillance to assess our troop size, our movements, to solicit and enable attacks from other vectors. We know that they have used drones and kinetic attacks against Mexican military authorities.
I just returned from the southern border, and I asked the commander from Texas to San Diego if he has authority to shoot down drones that he's looking at, that's looking at his troops, and he still is not sure. I just left the southern border, and I think it goes back to that advisory. That advisory has created a stigma, and I think that we can mitigate or overcome that if we just change the word from aircraft to manned aircraft, and then they won't have such a huge penalty if they shoot down a drone. And certainly if someone wants to prosecute somebody for shooting down private property, there are plenty of laws on the books for that. Well, with that, I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses for helping the committee with its work. I do have to say that I would prefer that we were reviewing the facts of the signal chats that were conducted by Secretary Hegseth and the Trump leadership team in order to get to the bottom of that. However, I will at a later date in full committee enter a resolution of inquiry to ask the administration to provide information to this committee, to the Oversight Committee, regarding how that happened. It was bad enough, the last time we were here, we just knew that the initial signal chat had happened and that inadvertently they had included the editor of the Atlantic, who was not approved for clearance, and that the chat included specific information about those attacks against Yemen, and which could have put our sons and daughters in uniform at grave risk. Now, that was then. Now we know that this chat also went to Secretary Hegseth's brother, his sister. I don't think his mom was in on it. She's about only one in the family who wasn't in on it. And then the family attorney was in on it as well. So that's a whole set of people who were not authorized to be on that chat, again, that disclosed, classified information and actionable intelligence about an impending U.S. attack in Yemen. And then beyond that, now we find out that Secretary Hegseth is using his Gmail account and using a phone that was listed on his sports betting app and available to the public. So this just keeps getting worse. I know that is not the fault of these witnesses, and they probably cannot illuminate the circumstances, but I will be filing that resolution of inquiry asking for the White House to provide that information, because that is important. It's not partisan politics. It's just what the Oversight Committee should be doing to keep military personnel safe, like what we're doing here. We're having a hearing on drones, being flown in the area of U.S. bases, and that presents a danger to our sons and daughters. Well, so does using a non-secure platform to discuss actionable intelligence against our enemy who has anti-aircraft and anti-naval vessel capability. that's really important too, and that presents a clear and present danger. I know that there were reports from in the press that the White House said that was childish. That was childish that Mr. Secretary Hegseth did that. I agree with that assessment. I think it was totally immature, and it demonstrates an unfitness and a lack of seriousness about protecting our sons and daughters in uniform. You know, we all nominate young men and women from our district to the Military Academy at West Point and to the Naval Academy. And dear God, you can't, you know, put a family in that position, put one of our best and brightest in that position, and then leak information to our enemies while they're going into battle. Okay, so this committee, myself included, investigated an attack, 2020 attack by al-Shabaab at Manda Bay in Kenya. That was a drone attack. Several recent base attacks overseas, in fact, have involved the use of drones. So, Admiral, how has our profile, you know, countermeasures against drones, how has that changed since those initial attacks back in 2020 that resulted in U.S. casualties?
Yeah, so since that time, we've fielded a number of new systems across a variety of the spectrum, electromagnetic as well as electro-optical and infrared sensors to build our domain awareness. We've also fielded a number of kinetic systems that shoot interceptors or use some sort of munition, and they're deployed at our most vulnerable and most likely to be attacked facilities overseas. That is where the bulk of our counter-UAS capability is actually located, is overseas, and hence the problem here in the homeland is we have very limited and sparse and distributed capability across, you know, the multitude of installations we have.
Thank you, Admiral. Thank you for your courtesy, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to briefly comment about the previous questioner. Once again, going with the woke media story and not bothering to mention the success of the strikes which restored freedom of navigation, protected shipping lanes, kept Americans safe, nor did he bother to mention that the encrypted service that was being used was one recommended by the previous administration, by DHS guidance. But my questions with regard to this topic is for both of you, and you can just this is the context. So do we have the technology to discover that there is UAVs in the neighborhood of our bases?
Yes, Congressman, we do.
Okay. And can we track, if a UAV is there, can we track it? We have the technology to track it?
Yes, Congressman.
Okay. And then you could interdict it if you chose to at every base?
We have different options for interdiction, Congressman, across a spectrum for the commander to use their best judgment.
But you could interdict if you chose, if you so chose, and you have authorities under 130I, perhaps, depending on the command chain there, right? I mean, you could make that point, right?
Depending upon the installation, whether it's a covered installation, Congressman, you would have the 130I additional authorities. But as the Admiral has said, there's always the ability to respond if there's hostile intent for that base commander.
But you have to determine hostile intent, and that's the problem, right? Admiral Spadero, could you explain how unauthorized drone activity, even when it's caused by recreational or commercial users, diverts critical security resources away from responding to legitimate national security threats, please?
Yes, Congressman, thank you for your question. If we go back to New Jersey and you know, that activity, once the FAA put the temporary flight restrictions in place, and there was, you know, very broad and comprehensive coverage of that by the media. Many of you spoke about it. Many of the members of Congress talked about the anxiety that was building in the community due to the high level of sightings. Once that word got out, that public messaging about responsible drone use, once the word got out about the flight restrictions, we saw a rapid decline in the number of sightings. The drone activity essentially went away. And we don't want it to get to the point we have to do that every time. If we can message to the public that responsible commercial and recreational application of your drone is an imperative to prevent diverting our attention and our resources, both from investment, training, and response, we're going to be better at defending the homeland. But if we have to continually be aware of negligent drones flying into our base, it is going to divert attention. That's not to say that we don't need to address this threat, because as was brought up by this committee, and we agree with, our adversary has demonstrated that they will use this type of activity for unauthorized surveillance, for espionage.
Yeah, and let's add to that for a second, and that is the coupling of AI, which is moving rapidly forward and providing autonomous navigation, obstacle avoidance, deep learning, computer vision, easier to become weaponized, real-time image recognition, target identification. So I would like briefly, if you could, either one of you want to talk about the threat of AI going to, coupled with drone technology, to become an increasing, actually exponentially increased threat to our national security.
Congressman, it's a great question. Thank you for that. On the policy side, we need to make sure that our regulations internally at the DoD are streamlined to the extent that we stay at pace with the threat that we face outside the fence line of our installations. We need to make sure that we are giving the commanders on the ground clarity on what they have for authority and providing them the capabilities to counter those threats. Now, I think the Admiral can speak better as far as what is actually being developed at this time and how far ahead we are in counter-UAS technologies. But as far as the policy purview is concerned, I know from the Secretary of Defense front office down, we need to give the warfighter every capability they need to keep our service members safe.
I know that I'm not going to have time to hear your answer, Admiral, sorry, but with regard to the policy, I would ask that you work with the chairman of the subcommittee on policies that need to be rewritten, perhaps through legislation that we can do to facilitate defending against this combination of AI and drone technology, which is advancing very rapidly. And Mr. Chairman, to that extent, I have some unanimous consent request, if possible. So,
yes.
Yeah, the first one is autonomous ascent, how AI is reshaping the future of the UAV industry. Another piece, mystery drones swarmed a U.S. military base for 17 days. The next one, what we know about the Langley Air Force Base drone incident.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cloud, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for bringing up this very important topic that's very timely. And thank you, Admiral, especially for your service and those in uniform behind you for what you do to protect and serve our country. It occurs to me that we're discussing this issue, but it seems to me like it's as much a system of some of the bigger issues we've seen at the Pentagon in regarding our stance just on the world stage, in the sense that, you know, I wish we were talking today about how advanced we are and how forward-thinking we've thought about this, and that we've invested in these new technologies, and that we're leading the world in it, and when we look at drones and drone incursions. But yet, for me, you know, I've considered that funding our defense is our #1 constitutional duty in Congress. My biggest concerns have been that sometimes we are funding legacy systems that are outdated as opposed to investing into where the puck is going, so to speak. And while the funding for this is in lots of different buckets, my analysis, looking through a bunch of it seems like we're spending about $22 billion-ish in the last budget on fighter jets, and maybe $1 billion on drone and counter-drone technology together. Maybe off a bit because, again, it's in a lot of different pockets. But it's that concerns me in the sense of, you know, we're talking about military incursions over our base. We're talking about one drone coming and what we can or can't do about it. I think from from the American taxpayer who's sitting at home going, we're spending $800 billion roughly on defense, and we can't shoot a drone down. It's just a frustrating experience because we want to think that we can do that. So, as has been mentioned, us needing to do our job to make sure that you have the capabilities to do it. But I would also wonder how much of this is a little bit of a reactive stance in command, being more concerned about CYA, so to speak, as opposed to protecting the assets and the intelligence and the information that is available on that base. You mentioned that you recently developed the SOP, I guess about a month ago. That was news to me. Could we get a copy of that sent to this committee?
Yes, sir. I don't see a problem with that. I'll coordinate with Commander U.S. Northern Command.
Okay, that would be much appreciated. And you know, we all remember the what I would call Biden's balloon blunder, where we had this balloon come across. We sat here and watched it for days. I went to a meteorologist at one of the local news stations, and he was tracking it and predicting where it was going to go, and yet we were watching it go over bases and not doing anything about it. How much is this is just not the will to act versus legitimately you being prohibited legally from doing things? There's a difference between not having a clear authority and being prohibited from doing something, I guess, is what I'm trying to drill
Yes,
down.
Congressman, that's a great question. For us on the policy side, we seek to clarify the authorities for base commanders so that they understand exactly what they are able to do. And as you pointed out, sometimes there may be a little bit confusion because of how the language is given out or guidance is pushed down to the lower levels. During our review of Counter-UAS policies, as prescribed in Section 925 of the FY25 NDA, we've gone back and we've reviewed all of our Counter-UAS documentation. For example, Section 130I, it was at about 130 pages. We've cut that down to 20 pages now. So we're looking to streamline our processes as much as possible so commanders understand what they have for authorities.
That's certainly very helpful, and I guess you know, if I could convey kind of the angst to the American people, we're looking at this and thinking, okay, there's drone incursion into the United States. You know, there's bad actors within our borders now who have the ability to even attack infrastructure. I mean, we're talking military bases, but it could be electric power lines, it could be pipelines, it could be anything at this point, and we seem very like we're approaching this from a very bureaucratic standpoint as opposed to something that literally could be a problem next week. And I'm wondering what we can do and what we can help you do in the sense of urgency that could be needed. You know, we have bad actors even at state level within our borders because, you know, we had open borders for the last 4 years. So the terrorist activity that's now in our country, bad actors from other state that don't have the best interest of our country in mind are here with this kind of capability. And what can we do to speed up this process so that it's handled with the urgency as opposed to kind of like this curious bureaucratic question that needs to be resolved? That's a question. What can we do to speed it up, both from DOD and from Congress's standpoint to support what you need?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. We have a legislative proposal working through the Pentagon right now focused on 3 areas where we could improve Section 130I. In the Department's opinion, we don't want this provision to sunset. We want to make sure that the authorities continue forward. There is an expiration date on 130I authorities next year. We also want to expand the locations and missions covered under 130I. As we've discussed today, the bases are not all covered. Not all installations qualify as one of the 9 mission areas under 130I. So we'd like to expand that to cover all installations. And then we'd also like to facilitate data sharing because right now data sharing from the DoD side is limited only in the pursuit of a legal case against a particular individual or group. We're not able to share data with our interagency partners to improve our tactics, techniques, or procedures And to your point, Congressman, earlier about driving cost efficiencies, being able to share data to produce better technology would help us be more efficient with taxpayer money.
Thank you for that. The gentleman's time's expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Luna, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Here's what every American needs to know that's watching this currently. In 2024 alone, 350 drones were detected flying over our military installations, over 100 to be exact, and that came straight out of the mouth of General Gregory Gillett, commander of NORAD and U.S. Northern Command. These were not just toys, these were intelligence gathering, signal jamming, and potentially weaponized drones. These incursions happened while the Biden administration sat on their hands, allowing bureaucracy and interagency dysfunction to run the show. I see a lot of military here right now. You guys all know that bureaucracy many times can be our worst enemy. Now that President Trump is back in office, thank God, we finally have strong leadership again, but cleaning up Biden's national security blunder is no small task. Our military installations are still extremely vulnerable. As hearing just sitting here from other some of my colleagues, we have the CCP, Iranian proxies, Mexican cartels, they all know this. We are here today to fix that, and let me be crystal clear. As I'm sure many of you would agree, if you are flying unauthorized drones over military installations, you should expect it to be shot down. Don't expect Uncle Sam to pay for either. My opinion is play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Now, Admiral Spendro, I've heard directly from General Gillett in February, 350 drones, incursions over 100 military installations in 1 year. I know that this is not your fault directly, but this is a massive security gap and an utter failure. Under current authorities, what is preventing base commanders from neutralizing these immediately, in my opinion, going out there with a shotgun and shooting these things down?
Well, thank you, ma'am, for the question. I wish it were as simple as shooting it with a shotgun, but it's not.
Depending on elevation. But what's stopping it? Is it still the bureaucratic red tape and sign-offs? Because in my opinion, if you're flying something like this that can collect jam communications, maybe carry explosives, collect surveillance on classified systems, I don't think that you should have to be required to make a phone call. I think that if you see it, you should shoot it down.
Yes, under 130I, unauthorized surveillance would meet the standard for engagement. If it were interfering with your operations, it would meet the standard for engagement. If you're not a 130I, then again, back to the rules of engagement and establishing hostile intent or hostile act. But you may get there. So just the presence of that drone over your base may meet hostile intent or hostile act. There is not a set of circumstances I can tell you in every case and go down a checklist. Okay, you met it. Go ahead and shoot.
Sir, I mean, I think you might agree. If you are flying a drone in any capacity, I don't care if it's civilian or not, over military installation, I don't even think you should have to go to a checklist. I think that it should automatically be taken down.
Yeah, and that's the preference to invoke 130I is to relieve that burden because we do agree that unauthorized access to our bases poses a threat. Even if there aren't sensitive activities, it does provide surveillance of our force posture, our weak points, our vulnerabilities, descriptions, geographic details of the base.
All of the information, right?
They can gather intelligence piece by any means necessary. So we do want 130I protection because we'd like to relieve that burden. Now, engagement still needs to meet the standard, the responsible standard. You have to do a collateral damage assessment before you can engage.
Well, I have a feeling with this administration and the members on this panel, I think that you'll probably get there. So help is on the way in that regard. Mr. Diddlifsen, hopefully I said that okay. Do you believe that foreign adversaries like China and Iran exploit the jurisdictional chaos under the previous administration to increase their drone activity over U.S. territories?
Yes, Congresswoman. I think our adversaries take advantage of every weakness that we have in our system, and they're constantly probing, trying to find an entry point.
Okay. Well, let me just be crystal clear for the record. If you fly a drone over an American military base, it should be blown out of the sky. I don't think that this is a controversial perspective to have. No phone calls, no paperwork, no permission slips. But under the Biden message, I think it was more or less the message of fly wherever you want. We'll kind of deal with it later. But be crystal clear, under this administration, the message is FAFO. For decorum sakes, we won't interpret that, but just mess around, find out. You guys all know what that means. We have the technology, we have the capability, but what we lacked up until now is the courage to act without apology. This isn't about drones, it's about deterrence. It's about restoring the kind of unapologetic strength that keeps our enemies at bay and our warfighters safe. I yield my time. Thank you guys so much for being here today. You guys look great in uniform. And you do too, ladies.
Thank you. In closing, I want to thank our witnesses once again for their testimony today. I now yield to Ranking Member Subramaniam for closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, let's keep it brief, that I think we have some good ideas that we can maybe turn into legislation, and we can hopefully make sure that we empower bases to both have the right technologies to address this, as well as to make sure more military installations are covered under statute potentially, make sure there's better coordination with state, and local, and federal, and make sure that overall we have a workforce and the capacity to be able to address these challenges. So I'm glad we are all on the same page on that front, and I look forward to working on this together. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for closing remarks. It seems that we're a bit paralyzed here in Congress to deal with emerging technology. I've been working on cybersecurity legislation for the last 6+ years, and it has to go through the bill that we need, a comprehensive bill, would have to go through at least 10, maybe more committees of jurisdiction to get it right in the House, and probably another 5+ in the Senate. And we are just unable to do what we need to do to address real national security issues in the realm of cybersecurity. And I fear that it's going to take some tragedy to cause us to act in that capacity on cybersecurity. I don't think drones are much different, both because of the complexity, the challenges that we face from a legislative perspective, whether it is authorizing and appropriating the money to purchase the necessary technology to monitor, to then engage with and disarm drones that are posing a threat, or whether it's the authority side to address the legal concerns that are very real. And it's probably not going to get done in one bill. It's going to probably be a number of bills, and there's going to be a lot of interest surrounding how we do it. As I think about this issue, the Chinese New Year drone was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and it also was very troubling. That display of, I guess it was an AI-enabled drone swarm that was basically providing entertainment. But while it was very entertaining, it's also terrifying. And I think that the capabilities of our adversaries, and seeing how war has evolved in Ukraine and how the Russians and the Ukraine military are largely relying on drones. I mean, there's a huge portion of that conflict is being used as technology as opposed to traditional warfare. So we've got to get moving on this. We have to enhance our capacity. We have to, Congress has to act, but a lot of this is the private sector getting up to speed. A lot of this is our Defense Department telling us exactly what they need. And we don't have time to waste. We've spent enormous amounts of resources to make sure that we have a 24/7, 365 air alert mission for fighter jets to be deployed. And I'm not sure how good that capacity is right now, considering that a couple dozen drones could severely impede our ability to get jets off the ground. So, I mean, this is a huge, huge challenge, and we need to act before it is too late. I appreciate y'all taking the time to come here today. It seems that we are moving in the right direction, and I appreciate your work to help get us where we need to be, and I look forward to working with my friend, the ranking member, to craft some legislation, and I will, with that, I will yield back. Thank you again for being here today. Without objection, all members have 5 legislative days within which to submit materials and additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. If there is no further business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you.